Right, how to replace a vellum. So, this is obviously far gone. I can't even patch that with a cheeky bit of super glue. So, I've removed the 4 screws for the resonator. Get rid of this, we don't need it. To start with, we're going to take the uke to bits, remove all the hardware. So all the hooks are coming off. Just take everything off. So, with all the hooks removed and the nuts, we'll just make a pile of bits for the moment. Turn the uke back over. And there's a tailpiece to come off. So I've taken all the strings off in order to remove the tailpiece. On this uke it's just a single screw, and behind it is a little spacer. It just sits there. And now we have our vellum. So this is the bezel, the larger of your rings, the top ring, and the vellum will be wrapped around what is known as the flesh ring, and you can just simply peel it off that. And there we have it. And now is a good time to polish any metalwork that there is on the uke. Bring the uke back in. When you take the hooks and everything off, the flange, for example, will then come off. And again, this is a prime opportunity to get some brasso out, or something of that sort. Autosol, I believe, is another good alternative to cleaning the metalwork up. As you can see, this is tarnished over the years. Some ukes are better than others in terms of plating and construction. And we'll crack on and prepare our water bath. So I've put all the bits in a nice little bowl, and now all we're interested in is our vellum. Now, the best place to acquire these is from the George Formby Society shop. They are absolute top quality vellums. Unfortunately, this one's got a bit creased. They come with a pencil line where they've drawn it out. This is the top of the vellum, so this will go on the uke that way. The inside, you'll feel the inside is rough compared to the smooth outer surface. So I've prepared a bowl of water. This is barely warm. You don't want it too hot, nor do you want it too cold. So we're going to put our skin in, lay it in there. And that is going to sit in there for 15-20 minutes. And we shall rejoin the action 20 minutes time. So, 20 minutes later, our vellum has, I don't know how to describe how it goes. You know, a lot more malleable. As you can see, it's softened up quite a bit. And we just put that on a kitchen towel. I usually just prop it up, dab it down, get all the excess water off it. And now, come over to our uke. Now this is the critical part. This initial setting, when you first fit the vellum, we're going to want a couple of hooks and nuts. This initial setting is what determines whether, when you pull the vellum tighter, will determine whether you run out of thread, or for different reasons you can run out of room. So you lay the vellum across the top, set your flesh ring down. I'll set it sort of level or a couple of millimetres below the edge of the pot. And then you get your bezel and just folding that over, and you begin to work it round, just pulling the vellum through. It can be quite tricky. This is where a hook comes in, just to help you hold it in place. So I put a hook in just to hold the bezel somewhat, to stop it roaming around, and you just pull the vellum through, and again come around to the opposite side, fit a hook, only loosely, and now you go round and check that the bezel is on the pot, right? You just add hooks. Perhaps one in each corner, so to speak. Just to stop things getting away. And then you want to set the bezel down somewhat so that there's something like, you know, don't know what that is, 8 or 9 millimeters above the surface. You can see how high I've sort of set that. So you've got plenty of room to pull it down. And once you've got that in position, you look round the flesh ring here and you can see you've got a crease there. So by pulling the vellum up, go round and make sure that the flesh ring is tight at the bottom of the bezel. There's no creases in the vellum. You see this side of the bezel's high, so just push that down. Do the nut up a bit more. Perhaps could do another hook really. But again, going around, pulling the vellum up so that it's good and tight all the way around. Making sure bezel is level on the uke, and that it is, this side's a bit high, so just push that down somewhat. It's just a case of looking at it by eye. You can get a ruler out and measure it if you want, but that's not too bad. So at this point, just double check that there's no creases and everything's clean on that flesh ring. At this point we're done, and now you have to leave that overnight to dry out, and then we come back in the morning and trim it, refit it, and on with the next stages in the morning. So right, we're back next morning. This has had plenty of time to dry out. It's got a bit crispy. There's a little bit of tension in it now. So at this point, all of this is pretty dry, apart from around the flesh ring on the inside of the pot. So all we're going to do this morning is take it off again and leave it to dry further. Just take it off the uke and that's what you're left with, and stick that on the windowsill for the afternoon, and then we'll come back and rejoin the action later on. So now, after the vellum has been sunning away on the windowsill for 2 or 3 hours, I think, the flesh ring is now nice and dry, everything's very crisp. So at this point we're going to trim it. Now some people will say to trim it at different times. Some will trim it when it's wet, some perhaps trim it once it's been on the uke and tightened up somewhat. So there are 101 different opinions as to where, when and how this should be done, but this is how I do it. So a pair of nail scissors is ideal. You just cut in, being careful of course not to cut your new vellum, and you go in along the square, the inside corner of the flesh ring, or slightly above it. You don't want to get any of this frilly mess. Where the vellum is smooth and consistent, cut along that line. Otherwise, when you refit the vellum, put it all back together, you'll see a frilly line all the way around, so this gives a much cleaner appearance. And there we are, in a wanna. So I'll just go round and see if there's any high bits. Let's just trim those down if they're a bit tall. So that's all nicely trimmed. Now, before we fit it on the uke, you want a candle. And the reason for this is vellum can be quite rough on the inside, and as you pull in the vellum down over the woodwork and the finish, it can grip it quite well. And I've taken vellums off and refitted them, but waxed them when I refit them, and you can get so much more tension on them. They pull down so much smoother, and it just puts less stress on everything generally. So what I'm going to do is just where it contacts the uke, so on the inside there, just rub a good load of candle wax onto it. And just go round it a couple of times. Make sure everything's, you can feel it. The difference between in there and around here is that this is so much smoother. It's got a bit of lubrication of the sort. So as well as doing that, so you can also do it on the uke. Just doesn't have to be a huge amount, just to help things along. So once that's done, you can feel all the, it's quite waxy now. You look for the thickness of the vellum, and usually there's a thin area and a thick area. I usually put the thinner area in the playing end, so to speak. So that is almost transparent there, you can sort of see my fingers through it. So I'm going to put that there at the playing end. And then we get the bezel. And usually on the bezel there's a join. And on this one it's quite a rough join in some respects. There's 2 screws in it holding it together. And you don't want that on show really, you want a nice clean look. So I hide that where the tailpiece is going to sit around here. You can hide that underneath there so it's not as visible. And you just sit that on there and start putting some hooks on. So now the hooks and the flange are all in place, and now that this is all trimmed and back together, this bezel does look particularly high. I've done that on purpose to avoid bottoming out when I come to get some tension on the vellum. On this particular instrument, what tends to happen when I fit a vellum is the bottom of the flesh ring starts to touch on the top of the shoes that the hooks go through, and at that point the vellum is scrapped. You can't get any more tension on it, and if there's not enough tension on it, you have to start again. So I've left this intentionally high because you can deal with it being too high, but if it's too low and you start bottoming out, you have to start again with a new vellum. So all the hooks and the nuts are in place along with the flange, and everything is just finger tight, all fairly evenly tensioned. And now I'm going to start with tightening them up. I just work my way round. Some people say to do opposites. You can do. I've never bothered. So I'm going to go half a turn on each. And once you've been round, just go round again. Make sure that there's even tension on each one. You can hear it. And that's that for now. I suppose you just carry on with just 1/8 of a turn at a time. From this point, 1/8 of a turn a day would be roughly what I would do until you've just got enough tension on the vellum that with light pressure you can just push your thumb into it. And that is about where we're going to leave it for today. Nice amount of tension in that. That'll settle down and eventually there'll be less tension, and you pull it down some more and it will relax, and pull it down some more, and in a few days you'll have a tight vellum. So over the next week, each morning or afternoon, whenever, 1/8 of a turn, which is one flat or a point, wherever you want to reference from, on the nut. Just go round each morning, keep going round. Again, once a day, one flat of the nut a day is what I do. And each day you'll find you gain tension, and the next day it appears to have softened up again. And you just keep pulling it down until the bezel is level with the surface of the vellum and the fretboard. That's what you're aiming for. In a week's time, when the bezel is where it should be, you want to reattach your tailpiece with the screw. Ooh. And the spacer. Fit that back in there. Refit some strings in the traditional manner. Set the bridge. Nut to 12th fret. Should be the same distance as the 12th fret to the nut, to the bridge. And there we are. Put the uke back together eventually. And should be quite happy with it after that. Signing off. Stuart Lowther, Lewis Clifton brings you Changing Ukulele Banjo Vellum.